moving on now to session 2. My name is Paul Branston. I'm the Regulatory and Government Affairs Manager at Western Power Distribution. The focus of my session is very much on the RIIO-ED2 price control framework, so again looking forward to the next price control. So what are the aims of this session? In terms of the key headline, it is finding out what customers want and what it is that you value. So hopefully we'll get a bit of context around that. We'll talk through how WPD is currently performing under the RIIO-ED1 price control, some of the changes that have been proposed by Ofgem for RIIO-ED2, and then touch on the value point again at the end of my presentation. So as we said, the brief points we want to cover on, what are the outcomes that matter most to you? We want to make sure we capture those today. How can we structure the outputs that WPD will deliver to achieve these outcomes? And finally, again, how can we deliver value to our customers? So I think the first thing I wanted to do is draw a clear distinction, and hopefully you can see on the chart the difference between the target and the clipboard. So we have a combination of both outcomes and outputs. So effectively at a high level, Ofgem will set high level outcomes for the companies. So what's the impact and benefit that stakeholders expect to see? So for example, delivering a safer network, delivering a reliable network. They're almost like leading and lagging indicators. So under those outcomes then we have specific outputs. So as Alex mentioned, there's 76 of those in RIIO-ED1, and they are specific commitments that set out exactly how we'll deliver those outcomes for consumers. So what are the key features of the current RIIO-ED1 business plan that runs to 2023? As Alex mentioned, it's an 8-year price control. Over that period of time, WPD will be investing over £7 million in core distribution network activities. And in terms of that spend, it effectively covers 6 output categories. So you have safety, reliability, environment, connections, customer satisfaction, and social obligations. They are the existing output categories under RIIO-ED1. And under those 6 output categories, there are 28 outcomes. So for example, if we focus on the environment, our high-level outcome, or one of our high-level outcomes, is very much about reducing the carbon footprint of the business. And then under each of those 6 output categories, the 28 outcomes, we have a number of outputs. They are the things that people can hold us accountable to. So again, very, very keen, we make sure that we have smart targets that are measurable, that we can monitor, and we do that over the whole price control period. So again, focusing very much on the environment one. We have number 28 is one of our outputs, reduce waste sent to landfill by 20% in the first 2 years of RIIO-ED1 and 5% per annum thereafter. So that's very much the focus of RIIO-ED1. The question is, how are we doing? So the chart you'll see on the board, on the screens, is the current representation from Ofgem. These are the 6 output categories across all of the network companies across GB. So WPD is in the top 4, so West Midlands, East Midlands, South Wales and South West, compared to our counterparts or our peers in Electricity North West, up in Scotland, up in the north of the UK, GB. Then we have UK Power Networks, which cover the London region, and Scottish Power. So we're proud, obviously, as WPD, we're keen to engage with our stakeholders and deliver what's expected. And as you can see from the report, we are one of the only DNOs that has green across the board, which means we are either on target to deliver our outputs, if they are 8-year outputs over the whole of the price control, or for annual ones, we're actually delivering those, and we have delivered those since the start of the price control. So in 2017-18, WPD met all of its 76 outputs. So as we mentioned, 64 of those are yearly outputs, and we've met all of those, and 12 of them are 8-year price control outputs, and we're on target to deliver all of those. So thinking ahead about what Ofgem's trying to deliver for RIIO-ED2, RIIO-ED2 is effectively moving away from the 6 output categories, or the consultants are moving away from the 6 output categories, the safety, the environment, reliability, and so on, and moving those to basically what are the 3 high-level outcome categories. They're listed on the screen, so you can see them on your iPads. So principally, we're moving to output categories which are meet the needs of consumers and network users, maintain a safe and resilient network, deliver an environmentally sustainability network. They are an environmentally sustainable network. They are the 3 headline outcomes that Ofgem's looking to get companies to be held accountable to under RIIO-2. So as I think we've explained before, actually how these outcomes and outputs are presented under the RIIO framework is important, but actually the key thing for us is that we deliver exactly what it is that our stakeholders want. So our absolute priority is to deliver clear benefits for customers. We're also looking to ensure that customers know what they're getting for their money and trust that WPD is providing the highest levels of service and quality possible. So we asked those questions to stakeholders last year, and stakeholders came back with the strategic outcomes that you wanted us to deliver, and they are effectively keeping the lights on, delivering a smart, flexible and interconnected network, providing information that is accessible easily, which is an interesting talking point given the conversation we just had on our table about people finding out about what WPD does and how we deliver our outcomes. Delivering a safe and secure network for all. Identifying and supporting vulnerable customers in vulnerable situations. And the final one, which is about delivering an efficient value for money service with the lowest possible bills. So at the end of this point here for the section on outcomes is questions. Hopefully you'll pick these up as part of your table discussions. So as we mentioned, WPD needs to communicate to stakeholders what it is that we're delivering and make sure that stakeholders can understand what it is that we're delivering. So the question for the table is really for discussion next is, are WPD's 6 strategic outcomes still appropriate? Or are there any missing? Are there anything else that you as stakeholders would want us to focus on, in particular as part of the RIIO-ED2 price control? And as we mentioned, they're the 6 output categories that we've currently got, which we know our stakeholders want. What we've then tried to do is align those to Ofgem's 3 new output categories, meeting the needs of consumers and network users, maintaining a safe and resilient network, and delivering an environmentally sustainable network. So hopefully you'll see on the screens and on your iPads how we've tried to align those 6 outcomes that we're delivering under those high-level outcome headings for Ofgem. The questions to the groups are, do you think we've got those right, or do you think some of those parameters could sit under different categories? We welcome views on that. So moving on to the RIIO-ED2 and thinking about the structure of our outputs, once we know what they are. They're effectively going forward likely to be 3 categories under the Ofgem framework. They are defined under the output categories of licence obligations, price control deliverables, and output delivery incentives. Effectively what we're talking about here is how Ofgem then holds the companies to account. So in terms of a licence obligation, we are given a licence to operate, WPD is given a licence to operate to run the network, and within that licence there are a number of minimum standards that apply to all companies across GB. And a failure to meet any of those standards could lead to penalties or enforcement action by Ofgem, by the regulator. That's the highest level of licence obligation. Next one down then we have the price control deliverables. These are specific deliverables that are with explicit ring-fenced funding levels attached. So for example, you could have a one-off large-scale capital expenditure programme, which is allowed as part of the price control to deliver a specific outcome or a specific output for consumers. And both the allowance then and the price control will fit within TOTEX, the total expenditure allowed, as would the outputs that are required to deliver that. So for example, the tree trimming programme that we do is a good example of that. It could be a length of network times by unit cost, and that's effectively what we're funded to deliver the price control to maintain resilience. The third output area, or the third category, is an output delivery incentive. So this is effectively where service improvement above and beyond what is defined as the minimum standard is required or is in the interest of consumers, which again is why these sessions are really, really valuable. Are there things that we think consumers want, particularly in our networks, that we think need to be captured within the price control? And if so, what's the strength of feeling, what is it that people want, and how much of it? So for example, this could include, from a price control perspective, reputation incentives, financial incentives, which would include both rewards and penalties. And again, they could be common across all sectors, but that's part of this consultation process at this stage. So network performance, targets for power cut, duration and frequency. I'm sure people will have heard about the CIs, customer interruptions, CIs and CMLs. That's a good example of what it is that we do. We reduce those as we go through the price control period. So again, that's an example, just a presentation really of how Ofgem's framework is expected to operate under the RIIO-2 process. So the challenge for us going forward is to make sure that our business plan is structured so it's clear and understandable for consumers. As we mentioned, we currently have a number of outputs, 76 under RIIO-ED1, that don't naturally fit into Ofgem's proposed new structure. So some of them do. So for example, under the current category, under reliability, we have guaranteed standards of performance, and for example, again quite topical given the conversation we had on our table, installation of flood protection at substations, and reducing the average frequency and duration of power cuts. They sit quite clearly as a reliability output of the RIIO-1 price control. Some of those are licence obligations, some of them are price control deliverables, and some of them are output delivery incentives. Some of the ones that currently under RIIO-ED1 do not fit quite clearly under any of those particular categories, which again is why we're quite keen to understand where people think they do fit. So for example, under the current category of social obligations, we have a commitment whereby we will contact vulnerable customers on the priority service register every 2 years. That is to make sure that we keep our records up to date. And that goes beyond a basic licence obligation that we have, which is to hold a priority services register. So that's the sort of proactive approach that WPD will take. On safety, again, we have reducing accident frequency rates, and there are examples there and the commitments for each of the areas we've got. But they are wider commitments. They are wider commitments that are currently forecast to be captured by Ofgem's price control proposals. So the question really for the groups today is, do those outputs still work for you? Are they things that you want us to deliver? Are they key outputs that you want us to deliver under the RIIO-ED2 price control? So moving on now, the options for discussion in terms of where WPD focuses its RIIO-ED2 price control. So really, I'll step through these in all of them. We have three options really. We have option A, which is to limit our outputs solely to those that fit within three categories or three types of outputs set by Ofgem. So again, the coloured boxes at the top of the graphic at the bottom of the screen. The second option is to develop our outputs into three types of outputs, and then allow stakeholders to suggest additional commitments that they consider are important or they want us to deliver in the price control, and then effectively they could become voluntary price control deliverables. So again, things that we deliver over and above what is already required in the basic price control. And the final option then really is to develop a pool of outputs that we know stakeholders want, and WPD will then decide which category they should sit under, again through stakeholder consultation. So again, we can fit those. Is what stakeholders want, do they fit quite clearly into Ofgem's three output categories? Do we want to go wider than that, or do we deliver the remaining outputs as part of a wider stakeholder commitment? Moving now on to delivering value for money. We've spoken therefore very much about outputs, getting the output categories right for RIIO-ED2, and then consulting with stakeholders what outputs they want. Delivering value for money obviously is key to WPD as well, and part of that really is understanding exactly what it is that WPD is charging their end users. So for example, taking an average GB domestic electricity bill, the average cost of that now is £577 per year. And on the graph on the left-hand side, you can see the split of those. So the large dark blue area is the wholesale costs of electricity, and the bit that's relevant for WPD, and we're discussing today, is the green bar, which is extrapolated on the right-hand side. So you can see there that of the £577 per year electricity bill, 17% of that is given to WPD to run the network. That's about £92 per year, so less than £100 per year. Breaking that down then, so as I said, it's about less than £100 a year. It's £8.17 per month, or effectively it works out at about 27 pence per day for the average domestic end user. And the question, therefore, which we'd like you to consider further as well, is what is it that WPD delivered in 2017-18 for the average end user for 27 pence per day? We spent just under £1 billion running the network, so £941 million. We delivered a reliable network, so network reliability was reported at 99.995% across the whole of our networks. And the return on the regulatory equity, which is the return that our investors get for investing in the assets and investing in WPD, which we then use to run the network, was 6.3%. That's the return to our shareholders in 2017-18. One of the challenges around delivering value for money is people really understanding, and again, one of the questions was about sort of the information that's put out in the public domain. What we're showing you on this slide is some of the backdrop that you may have seen in the papers this year. So, for example, a number of the headlines along the lines of network companies under scrutiny for rising UK electricity prices. So again, there's the question about, do people understand the whole £517, the electricity distribution bill, what element of that is your network costs and what we're delivering, and actually are we delivering value for money? So the first thing really is to understand that, and then actually be able to comment on whether you think WPD is delivering value for money, given the knowledge that you're likely to have, hopefully, of our costs. So again, the question is, what do you get from WPD? The question that we're asking the tables today is, what factors do you think count towards value for money? So we highlighted some of the deliverables before in terms of reliability, safety, but here are some of the ones that we consider is important for stakeholders, and again, welcome views on this. So for 27 pence per day, WPD delivered the highest customer satisfaction out of all DNOs, so we were the 7th consecutive year. We were also the #1 for stakeholder engagement, so this is the feedback that comes through Ofgem through the industry regulator. We delivered a better than network performance, target network performance. So as the slide shows, that on average our customers have a power cut once every 2 years, and the duration of that will be 26 minutes. In terms of focusing then on the connections business, in terms of we have particular targets on price control, on time to connect and time to quote. A number of small schemes, so all our small schemes were given a quote within 8 days, and they were connected within 42 days of the quotation. We've talked about the big changes that are going on in the industry. WPD is already on way to developing our distribution system operator. For us, it's very much a change, an iteration really, rather than becoming something which looks radically different from a DNO to a DSO. It's evolving a number of the systems and processes that we currently have. And finally, on the key outputs, we've supported over 15,000 fuel core customers to save over £5.4 million a year.